is resilience important? Well, all of us, no matter how happy or successful our lives are, could be even the most successful people in the world, we all are going to face times where things go wrong in our lives. Everyone is going to face those times. We will lose somebody that we love. We will go through illness. Myriad will lose our jobs. We'll become ill. There's a whole host of reasons why we will all suffer and go through periods of life which are called adversity. But you will notice some people manage to get over and react much better than others to those events in life. So resilience is the ability to be able to cope and deal with those issues, those periods of darkness, uncertainty, adversity, and deal with them in a way that does not impact our well-being for such a long time that it affects the rest of our lives and affects the quality of our lives. It's much more than bouncing back. You hear the term bouncing back. Resilience is the ability to bounce back. Well, you're not a bouncy ball, but it is the ability to deal with things that go wrong. So if you have resilience, you will have a better quality of life and you will have peace of mind. What happens if you're not resilient? And you may know some people who, if they're faced with dark times, they can't seem to shake the darkness out of their life. They're stuck in a rut. So even if something seemingly small happens, they seem to dwell on that event for a long time. It affects their sleep, their appetite. Those are typical signs of lack of resiliency. But I have to say, resilience is something worth bearing in mind, that resilience is a scale, almost like a continuum. So you have some people who are so resilient, extremely resilient, and they will suffer a big setback, they will lose their job, but it doesn't affect their confidence, their self-belief. They accept that these things happen in life and they see it as an opportunity, and they have a different way of thinking and behaving such that it doesn't affect their lives. They can, after some time of reflection, they can move on quite quickly. However, on the other end of the scale, there are those who suffer. It could be a loss, it could be they could lose their job, or it could be even, traumatic in terms of getting ill. It could be the fact that they lose their job or loss of a loved one, but that loss or adversity will affect them seemingly forever. They cannot they stay in a rut, and the rest of their lives they remain in that period, the doldrums, unable to get themselves out of that rut. So in that case, you could say, I don't know if it's worth thinking about, do you know anybody, friends of yours, relatives, who are in either of those two camps? Just reflect, and perhaps where do you sit on that continuum? So that's why resilience is so important. A couple of examples of famous people who I think are very resilient. One is Oprah Winfrey. She had a very traumatic childhood. So Oprah had a child at 14, but the baby died at 2 weeks. But despite that huge loss, she persevered with her education, and she even got a scholarship. Then she worked her way through ranks of TV, started at the very bottom, and has risen to become a global superstar. And the other person I want to mention is Maya Angelou. She is a world famous author, but she also had a very, very traumatic childhood. She was raped by her mother's boyfriend at 8 years old, and then she had to work in the sex industry to support herself and her family at a very young age. But she has now become one of the world's best-selling authors, with books such as And I Shall Rise and Why the Caged Bird Sings. A couple of really important points about resilience, definitely worth bearing in mind. First of all, resilience is not fixed during our lifetime. It definitely changes So it's worth bearing that in mind. The other point about resilience is that it is multidimensional. What do I mean by that? It means it can be different for different parts of your life. So you might be resilient in your workplace, but in terms of your family or even your friendship areas of life, you are not resilient at all. So just because you are resilient in one phase or one area doesn't mean that you are resilient in other areas. So you might need to need to work on that. And first of all, you need to be aware of that before you make changes. Thirdly, there is no one correct and fixed way of becoming resilient, and there's different ways of becoming resilient, and there's different strategies which I'm going to talk about, but I'm not saying one strategy works and is the only strategy that is going to be beneficial to you. And it might be you need to use a combination of these strategies, and I'm not suggesting you use only one way. So please bear that in mind while you're watching these videos. So we're all on our unique journeys regarding resilience, and I mentioned a little earlier on that resiliency, we all have our own continuum of resilience. We're on different levels of resilience, and that can be in different areas, but it can vary over time. So we have a scale, and it's our own scale. We're not benchmarking against anybody else. It's how we deal with it. It's where we sit on that resiliency scale. That's worth thinking about.